Ticket Volume is proud to bring you one of the top influencers in the service and support industry. With an international reputation, his expertise has been featured by The Economist, Social Media Today, Computer World, BizTech Magazine, and many more. He has contributed to books on customer service, social media, and IT change management. In May 2020, Nextiva included him in the list of the top 50 customer service experts of the decade. Welcome to Ticket Volume, news and information for improving IT experiences. I'm your host, Matt Barron, and this podcast is powered by InvGate, a global leader in IT service and asset management software. As you know, every week I chat with different IT leaders to share insights on service management, technology, business, and anything else that comes to mind. This episode is no exception. But before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Now, let's begin. Welcome to Ticket Volume, Roy Atkinson.
Great to be here, Matt. How are you?
Very good, very good. Thank you for taking the time to be here. We actually have had quite a few Twitter interactions recently, and the most recent one that I like the best, we were talking about personalized support, and you came up with this term that I'm going to give you credit for forever because it was so choiced. You said specifically, personalized service. I love that concept. What do you think about personalized service, Roy?
I wish there were more of it. Organizations that are doing personalization, he said doing air quotes, are not. So many of the emails and other communications that I get are things like, just for you, we've selected the following TV shows. And they're nothing I have ever watched, nothing that shows up in my watch history, not in a genre that I care about, just totally off base, but it's just for you. And the same is true with even places that should be really data savvy, like Amazon. Send me stuff that's like, what? You know, last time I bought cosmetics was never. So I'm not sure exactly why I get those things, but I think we all do. And I wish that organizations that said they were personalizing really were personalizing. And that's because organizations that say they're data-driven most of the time aren't.
Fantastic.
So another whole part of the conversation, I think.
Yeah, but I think that is on the periphery of exactly what we're talking about. There's data-driven, there's personalized, and then there's trying to fake it all, and people just see right through it. And you live in this intersection of customer experience and IT, right? That's kind of where that I think is your sweet spot. Where do you see the two industries interacting? What can we learn from each other? What is different from each other? I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
I think a lot of what's going on in the world of IT and in the world of customer experience and employee experience, there's so many overlaps and interconnections. I mean, we're talking about what we talk about customer experience. These days, we're very often talking about digital customer experience. I was just read some research and had a discussion with a company on their research about digital customer experience in several regards and how the channels are changing. Part of that's generational, but a lot of it isn't. A lot of it's driven by how we do things now, right? This is how we do things now, he said, holding up his phone. And it's the way we communicate. It's the way we judge things. It's the way we research things. We're all mobile and we're all digital, at least to a certain extent. And I think that, phone conversations were the traditional way that customers interacted with companies, but it's not anymore. They're using social media. They're using messaging apps. They're using mobile websites. They're using all kinds of different ways to communicate. And the trend is changing, not as rapidly as I would have expected, but it's definitely migrating more toward digital channels. So that's the digital aspect of customer experience. So how does all that digital stuff happen? Well, it happens through, obviously, technology. And how do companies deal with that? Well, in one way or another, whether it's in-house or outsourced or embedded in the business or a department of the business, it's IT. Information technology drives so much now. It drives all the media contacts. It drives customer experience. It drives everything. And so IT is, I did a presentation at Interop, I think 2 years ago, and it was all about how IT is right in the center of things now because there's so much depends on our information technology. And when I say IT, I'm going back to the root meaning. Information technology is how we do things, whether that's a department or a capability. Doesn't really matter. And that was part of the presentation that I did as well. So there is a huge overlap there, and I think we're just beginning to delve into it. And there's a third component of my world, which is digital transformation. I'm a fellow of the Institute for Digital Transformation, so there's a lot going on around that now too, and they're all related to each other. It's parts of the same globe.
I love that you break down IT to information and technology because we often forget and we think IT, we think those archaic ERP systems, the person who provides my workstation, but really it is. You own the information, you own the technology, and those two things, like they really power a lot of the business. When we last spoke, you talked a little bit about how contact centers are using tech in a completely different way. You see things like AI coming about and, predictive analytics. I'm curious, like, what do you think is happening in that industry that we could learn from and adapt to?
I think one of the things that's going on in the contact center world is really ingenious ways to use the advanced and emerging technologies that are out there. I was on a conference call with those analyst people with one company, and the CEO said something rather fascinating. He said, with AI, we can get through so much information. Think about all the recorded calls that live in contact centers, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of calls that no human could possibly get through and analyze and make sense of or criticize or look for quality. You've got to have machine learning and AI to get through that stuff and try to make sense of it. He says, what if we could go through all those recorded calls and pull out all the mentions of our competitors and whether or not they were mentioned positively or negatively by customers? And I thought, that's it. Man, you're really leaning on it now, and that's the kind of potential that companies have. And that's doable. That's very doable now. And I just thought that was brilliant because it's outside the realm of the contact center, you think, but it really isn't. And I think contact centers, in a lot of ways, are becoming much more central to organizations. And part of the reason that they are becoming more central to organizations is because of the data that they have. They've got the goods on all the customers and so many of the comments that customers make, the voice of the customer, all of that stuff, all the feedback. They have that data. And as we know, a lot of the data that organizations have is what's called dark data. They've never analyzed it. They never looked at it. Simply, as I mentioned, because it's impossible to get through it for humans. But now we've got technology that can do that if we can apply it in the right ways. So that's part of what's going on. And again, technology and information technology, bingo. So having the right tools and the right capabilities in the organization is really essential.
Exactly. Figuring out how to leverage technology to come up with those insights at scale. Such a difficult challenge. And you're right. We have all this information that we're basically wasting if we're not using. Just throwing away all that potential, that opportunity cost just kills my heart and my soul to think about.
Right.
Some other interesting things that AI, chatbots, do you feel like there's this uncanny valley or something that we're missing some sort of element when it comes to faking a human interaction with chatbots? What do you think about chatbots? Are they the future? Are they the past? What do you think?
I think that the dumb chatbot is going to be the past very soon. I tried to initiate a chat with a company that shall remain nameless yesterday. And it immediately ran out of stuff. I mean, second question, no answer. Didn't know what to do with me. Okay, I'll try to get someone for you was the answer. And notice how that was phrased too. I'll try to get someone for you. Oh, good, thanks. But you know, there are AI-powered chatbots that do a much better job of relating. There's a company that I do some work with that has virtual assistants that are they're called interactive virtual assistants, IVAs. And they're little sales pitches that they're not a replacement for IVRs. They're a whole different class. And they really are. And they've actually got a phone number where you can call up and get connected to one of these IVAs, and it will try to convince you to hire it. And it's fascinating how you can have a conversation with this AI. So that kind of chatbot is way, way better than the chatbots that are just driven by keywords and that kind of, old-fashioned chatbots. Those days are not going to be around for long because they're just not going to survive. Customers won't deal with it. What's the point? You're wasting your time. Customers hate wasted time. I certainly do. I hate to call, wait on hold, wait on hold, wait on hold. And the same is true with, I wasted my time with that chatbot. Why did I go there? Because I thought it might be easier and better. It wasn't. It wasted my time. So those days are gone. But I also think, and looking at the other part of your question, that to try to imitate humans is the wrong approach entirely. I think that we really have to recognize, and a webinar I was on yesterday talked about this blended intelligence. And the idea of blended intelligence is that there are skills that machines have, there are skills that humans have. Putting those two things together is a good way. Great book on this subject that's called Human Plus Machine. It goes back a few years, but man, it's brilliant. And it talks about the skills that humans have and the skills that machines have and how those can be blended together to produce something entirely different and produce better results. And one of the things that they say in that book, by the way, is that, everybody talks about the machines, the super machines, big deep blue and all that can beat the chess champions. But he says if you give the chess champion even a rudimentary computer that can do some calculations at today's speed, you're going to beat the big computer every single time. That blended intelligence is very powerful. That's where I think we're going. We're finding the ways that humans can add to the capabilities of machines, and we're finding the ways that machines can add to the capabilities of humans. There are tons of ways to do that, and I think it makes things very powerful. Augmented intelligence, I might call it. I don't know if that term is out there, but that's what occurs to me.
I love it. You can see how you can get to personalized support if you actually paired that human element. Imagine behind Amazon, there's someone reviewing the things being suggested to Roy Atkinson, and they say, no way, this guy doesn't wear makeup. I saw the last podcast he was on. We don't need to suggest any cosmetics.
Yeah, exactly true. And I think that, a lot of the email that I get, a lot of, because I will tell you that when it says CEO after your name, you get lots of email from lots of companies that want to sell you stuff. And some of it is just absolutely stunning to me that they would have even approached me on things like this, not having done even rudimentary research on the company that I work for and the things that we do. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. Do your homework, especially before you contact Roy. He's going to know and he's going to call you out. At least if you see something that's a yellow flag or red flag.
I got one today from somebody who was pleased to meet me at a conference I didn't attend.
They bought a list.
And I did email them back and say, I'm sorry, I was not there. So...
Oh man, we talk about business ethics as if it's this nebulous thing, like we just have to choose the right choice. It really comes down to those micro choices like that, to send that email, to buy that list of people that went to that event. All of those choices add up, and then eventually you create a poor experience. If you don't pay attention to those details and be an authentic human, organization, process be authentic, you will eventually be outed.
Yeah, sooner or later. The truth will out, and generally it's when you do something like that, and the other person goes, "What?" What?
Yeah, it takes them out of the moment. It interrupts the flow. So we mentioned Analysts earlier in the recording, and
We did.
I want to know more about the analyst industry. What is it like being an analyst? Because I think you've served in this role for quite some time. How would you describe it to someone that's looking from the outside?
I think it's a tricky kind of business in that you need to have a couple of different stances. You have to be able to listen with good ears to the things that companies are telling you and organizations are telling you in a lot of different regards. And there's a couple of different kinds of analysts, and I have more experience on one side than the other side. But you also have to maintain a little bit of skepticism and say, well, okay, but how does this fit in with the rest of the industry? And I think part of the skill of analysts is being able to look across whatever particular industry they're working with, whether it's customer experience, and there are some great people out there in CX, or whether it's IT, and there are some great people out there in IT. Look at it and say, okay, how does this fit with everything else that's going on? Is this really advancing in the direction they say it's advancing or think it's advancing? What can they do better? And then there's the other cadre of analysts who are the financial people. And they're looking at companies for their stock performance, for their performance against last quarter, for their performance against what they predicted it would be. So what's the financial health of the company look like? Who's investing in the company? Paying attention to those financial interactions. And one of the best analysts that I know is somebody who constantly comes back to follow the money. If you really want to know what's going on behind the scenes here, look where the money's coming from and where it's going to, and you can get a much clearer picture of what really is going on with the business by doing that. And that's certainly true to a certain extent. I fall more on the what's happening with the technology and the people side of things than I do with the financial stuff, although I do follow, of course, the financials as well. And companies are usually very good about holding periodic briefings, quarterly or even more frequently than that, to let the analysts invite the analysts in and say, okay, here's what we're working on. Here's what our roadmap looks like. You can't talk about this, but we're going to tell you. And that happens quite a bit. We're under NDA. But they give us an idea of what their financials look like and what their product roadmap looks like. And that's very useful to know, because then we can turn around and advise customers and clients as to what they might want to be thinking about to assure their own product stability and so forth.
Okay. Yeah. I think that part of our industry is so fascinating. It seems like it's behind black doors that you can't cross through. And I'll never forget when Gartner bought G2 Crowd, formerly G2 Crowd. Now it's just G2. And how much I leverage Reddit just to get feedback and authentic perspectives on technology, what's working, what's not. And I expected there to be more of a shift in the industry, I think, than there was. Maybe that still is taking some time, but I love that you're vendor agnostic. I love that you are able to provide some really good advice, not only from the people side of things, but also like, hey, I just have this challenge. How should I approach it? Is it a project? Is it a technology? Is it both?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a tricky tightrope to walk sometimes, because the companies that we work with, and I'm speaking for analysts here to an extent, they're nice to us because they want us to talk about them and recommend them. So they're nice to us, and they take us places and feed us and do things like that, which is nice. But we have to always say, okay, well, you know what? This is part of the job, and that's great. But we also have to say, well, this doesn't exactly line up with what I was reading last week about this company over here. So let's see how that works. So and they respect that. They totally get it. The good companies that I work with in general don't have any problem with me being vendor agnostic. They like it, in fact. Even if I have some kind of if I have a referral agreement with them, doesn't mean I can't refer somebody else. I'm very, very careful about that, being able to walk that line. So life is fairly good, but you got to be careful.
Exactly. I love that. That's such a good perspective. To figure out who's going to give you the honest answer, who's going to see past the steak dinner and give you honesty, clarity, true advice. You were listed as the top 50 customer service experts of the decade. So you've been in this industry for a long time. You have a long tenure. What's got you excited right now? What's got you wishing you were back in the trenches? What do you think is coming next?
I think there's going to be new ways of dealing with people. And one of the things that I've written about consistently is that I hope what doesn't happen in the customer experience industry, if there is such a thing, and I have some interesting thoughts on that topic, I hope we don't lose the customer in customer experience. I wrote a piece for Oracle Customer Experience a couple of years back that said, what you're describing a customer experience is really customer experience design, because my experience is something personal to me. And it's a funny thing. There's kind of an analogy to a lot of YouTube channels. And if you watch somebody's YouTube show, invariably at the beginning, they'll say, "Hi, guys. Welcome to my show." Well, you know what? I'm sitting here pretty much by myself, so I don't know who guys are. I experience things as an individual, and my experience is individual. Now, there might be times when I'm with a group of people at a theme park or something like that where we kind of see things as a group. But generally speaking, I read a book, I see a show, I buy a product, I'm using it. It's my experience. And I think that organizations have to recognize that. And that's along the same lines as what we were talking about before, right? The difference between personalization, whereas I'm in a cohort, and personalization, where it's me. And I certainly am an anomaly in a lot of ways and always have been. And so I tend to look at things a little bit differently from a lot of other folks. And that's good, I think, because companies need to hear that. They need to hear my weird perspective on things. Weird and proud of it, Matt.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. Yeah, don't lose the forest through the trees. Don't lose the customer and customer experience. That is a good point, because when we are internally focused on customer experience, oftentimes it is from the company's perspective. What is this flow going to be like? How do we get someone from not being our customer to being a fan of ours? And that really is all about the business. The lived experience that the customer is having is really captured in those customer journeys, not necessarily a value stream, but like individual interactions, and making sure that each one of those is so good that they'll go to the next journey and the next journey until they become a fan.
Yeah, and there's a piece that I wrote. It's a chapter in a book that's coming out from the Institute for Digital Transformation. And they asked me to write the chapter on customer experience and how it relates to digital transformation. And I broke the customer journey down into 8 stages and then broke it out. I talked about that in a kind of a linear way. And then I said, okay, but this is a part of a cycle. Once I go through from having discovered a brand or a product that I like, I go all the way through the various stages. I research it, I buy it, I use it, maybe I contact them for support, I become an advocate for them. And now what? Well, once I become an advocate for them, I'm talking on social media about them. I'm giving feedback on, Reddit or other sites about the product. Well, now somebody else uses that in their discovery. So they're at the beginning of the journey while I'm at the other end of it. And so it becomes kind of a cyclical thing. It's a spiral. And so it's a fascinating area. I really love talking about the stuff. And, even though I've gone from different aspects of it, everything that I've done over the last, 30 years or so has been revolving around how people interact in situations where somebody needs something from somebody else. whether it's retail
Yeah.
customer service or online or IT or whatever. Somebody needs something, somebody else is giving it to you, and how do you interact with them?
Yeah, exactly. I'm a huge fan of LB Gups, the learn, buy, get, use, pay, and support model. What a great way to think about the journey. And yeah, a lot of IT stuff really just sits in the S. It's all about support. They've already learned about you. They've already gotten the tools. They've already paid for them in some cases. So we don't always see the whole journey, but that really is part of the experience. And that is how they get to that support function. So such a cool topic. I hope that we can meet again and talk about this some more. But for now, where can people connect and learn more from you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, just LinkedIn / the usual stuff, Roy Atkinson. On Twitter, golly, it's Roy Atkinson. Shout me out. CliftonButterfield.com is the company site, and get a hold of us.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on Ticket Volume, Roy.
My pleasure.
And to our audience, thanks for listening to this episode. We've got a bunch more out there and more coming, so subscribe to receive an alert when there's a new one. You can also submit specific topics or guests. Just DM me, send me an email, matt@ticketvolume.com, or find us on LinkedIn. We've got a page for this. And remember, please leave feedback or reviews. You know how the algorithm loves interaction. This podcast is brought to you by InvGate, the all-in-one IT service and asset management system that helps organizations with world-class IT support. If you're looking for a solution to build your help desk on without the headaches of year-long implementations and large service contracts, you're going to love InvGate. Thanks for hitting play, and I'll see you around the way.